You are not alone on your journey. Listen in to the Unshakeable Living Show, Supernaturally and Divinely Unshakable with Lisa Beltz. Twice a month for your well-deserved dose of positive energy and your personal reminder that you are perfectly imperfect, and that's okay. Find your true calling and influence the world around you for the better with your profound gifts. Walk away feeling truly unshakable. Remember, God can't steer a parked car, so step on the gas now with Lisa and let him do the rest.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Coach Lisa, and I am coming to you on Wednesday, July 13th. I can't believe it's the middle of July already. And so again, just want to let everybody know a little bit about me in case this is your first time listening in. I am a life coach. I am an author of an Amazon best-selling book called The Becoming Unshakeable. And I am also a speaker and can do ladies studies or general business speaking. Whatever need you have, I am available to help you out. I do both in-person events as well as Zoom or online speaking. So reach out to me and let me know if you need anything. You can reach me at Coach Lisa, which is COACHLYSA, Coach Lisa at lisabeltz.com. And I always explain to people my name is Lisa with a Y, so it's spelled Lysa. But God also told me that I'm Lisa with a Y, which is a WHY. And so the Lisa with a Y is the impetus for my podcast. And that is to help you and everyone around you live an unshakable life, to be the best you can be, and to really develop a joy-filled and satisfying life. And so tonight's topic is expectations. And the subtitle, if you would, is friend or foe. So we all have expectations, some of them healthy, some of them not so healthy. Some are conscious, some are subconscious, and some are even unconscious. We don't realize that we have expectations until something pops up or hits us broadside, and we're going, wow, where did that come from? And so what we're going to talk through tonight is how to differentiate between healthy and unhealthy expectations. And then we're also going to talk about how to process through those healthy or unhealthy expectations. But before we dive into those topics, let's define exactly what we mean by an expectation. And so the dictionary defines the word expectation as a noun, which I was surprised at. A noun being a person, place, or a thing. So an expectation is a thing. It is not an emotion. So an expectation is the act or state of looking forward to something or anticipating it. It's an expectant mental attitude. It's something looked forward to. And often expectations include a prospect of future good or profit. And there's also a degree of probability that something will occur. So I also want to talk about the verb tense, which is expect. And I know this is a little boring to get started, but I want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page here. So as a verb, expect is to look forward to regard something as likely to happen, to anticipate the occurrence or the coming of something, to look forward with reason or justification. And so one of the examples is to anticipate the birth of a child. And having a granddaughter that is 3 weeks old today, I really resonated with that definition. And so I also went back and looked at both the Greek and the Hebrew, which ties back to the Latin, the basis of the root of the word. And so elpsis means expectation, trust, and confidence. It comes from the root word, which means to anticipate with pleasure and to welcome something. It's an expectation of what is guaranteed. And that is a little bit of where we set ourselves up. So let's think about the fact that expectations, or in the verb sense, to expect, is not an emotion. It's a noun and a verb, but that noun and that verb set us up for a wide range of emotions that are frequently triggered. So an expectation of and by itself is really neither good nor bad, but it's what we do with them and how we set ourselves up with those expectations that brings in the judgment. Remember the old song, I've got high hopes, high apple pie in the sky hopes? It's when those apple pie in the sky hopes become anticipated triggers and anticipated expectations that it can trigger emotions. So we often place expectations without realizing we did it until it upsets us. And so let's break emotions out into a couple of categories. So the categories are expectations that we have of ourselves, our expectations of others, others' expectations of me, and my expectation of an outcome or a circumstance or a situation. So going back to the expectations that I have of myself, for as long as I can remember, I mean, literally back to first grade, I have had ridiculously high expectations of myself. I would think that I should know something before I had learned it. And so what happens is I expect myself to be able to understand or perform or get something or do something. And it was not a realistic expectation. And so I would set the bar really high. And then when I didn't hit that totally unrealistic bar, I would say, see, I knew I couldn't do it. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as I've talked to numerous people over the last couple of weeks, working up to and getting ready for today's show, we all came to the same conclusion that when we have unrealistic expectations for ourselves, we set ourselves up for failure. Now, the positive of expecting things of yourself is that's where goals come from. So when we're working towards a goal, we're anticipating building a skill set or accomplishing something. You know, running a race is an example that I like to use a lot of times. If I'm running a marathon, I'm going to have to train, and training takes expectation. I expect that I'm going to be able to run farther and farther and farther. But if I go out today and run 1 mile, I'm not going to run 26 miles tomorrow. You've got to have realistic expectations and realistic milestones along the way. The other comment that I want to throw out here is when you're trying something new, it's okay to have an expectation, but it's equally okay to be bad when you're learning something. We all start off as rookies. So don't set that expectation that when you start something brand new, you're going to become proficient at it really quickly. You've got to grow into it. So for ourselves, there's realistic expectations, which is our goals and breaking those goals down into milestones. And then there's unrealistic expectations that we have of ourselves. That's where we set ourselves up for failure. And oftentimes when we set ourselves up for failure, it becomes a pattern that we repeat. It can trigger your confidence to decrease. It can set you off into depression. It can really play games with your mind. And a lot of times when we have those unrealistic expectations and we quote unquote fail ourselves, that can trigger us to, overeat, to binge, to drink, some of the other negative behaviors that we often tap into. It also lowers your vibration. So when we have an unrealistic expectation, that's when it triggers a negative emotion. It lowers your vibration, and you really need to be aware that you're accomplishing this. The second type of expectation I want to touch on is our expectations of others. And again, this is something we all do. We are not good at being aware of it. We are also even worse at communicating it. We talk about that in open, honest communication, you really need to tell others, especially a family member, somebody that you're in a relationship, even your coworkers, your boss. You need to be able to tell them what you need. It's not fair to others to have an expectation of them that you don't communicate. And then you go back to them and say, see, I knew that you weren't listening, or see, I knew you weren't going to meet my expectation. And so it sets you up for failure. It sets them up for failure. It creates unnecessary tension in whatever that relationship is. When others don't live up to your expectations of them, it's also really easy to go straight to blame. And that takes you out of the driver's seat of your life, and it takes you out of being in control. Anytime that we go to blame for others, we give away our power. And so the way you stay in that power is to have realistic expectations of others, or better yet, is no expectations of others, but to have open and honest and clear communication. So we're going to take a really short break right now. And when we come back, we're going to talk just a little bit more about expectations of others, but then we'll go on to others' expectations of us. So come right back. Take control over your future. I'm Lisa Beltz, and I'm here to help you realize your true potential and become unshakable. Schedule a completely free introductory coaching session with me now to see for yourself how I work. Get the divine guidance that you need to transform your life for the better. Go to lisabeltz.com and take that step towards transformation. That's LYSABELTZ. You are made for more. I'm Coach Lisa, and I'm here to help you achieve ultimate life satisfaction. Your life matters to the world. Reimagine your future with an individualized life by design approach with my free ebook, The 5 C's of Coaching: Commitment, Clarity, Coachable, Creative, and Change. Find the transformation you're looking for. Go to lisabeltz.com. That's LYSABELTZ.com.
There is divinity within you. Join Lisa Beltz on her show, The Unshakable Living Show, Supernaturally and Divinely Unshakable, twice a month, and find that divinity that you deserve. Lisa will help you feel encouraged, empowered, and realize that you're not alone on your journey. With Lisa, address the foundation, the frame, and the finish of your dreams and become truly
And welcome back. This is Coach Lisa, and you are listening to the Unshakeable Living Show. And tonight we're talking about expectations, friend or foe. And so far we've touched on expectations of ourselves, our expectations of others. And now we're going to dive into the scenario where other people have expectations of us. And many of us have lived in the hell of being the ping pong ball for someone else's expectations. They have an expectation, you don't meet it. They have another expectation, you meet it. They have another expectation, you don't meet it. but it's not communicated well. And so you end up being this ping pong ball, and it's where you get into that cycle of never feeling good enough, never feeling like you can meet their expectations. And there's this whole downward spiral that often comes out of that. And this is true whether it's your parents, a teacher, a boss, your spouse, a pastor, whoever. It takes an intentional step to break free from this yoke. But the good news is we can all do it. It begins with awareness. You have to be able to step into the scenario and kind of go, you know what? There's an expectation here. I'm trying to meet someone else's expectation, but they're not doing a very clear job of communicating it. To measure something for it to not be an impossible dream or an impossible goal, you've got to have clarity around what that expectation is. And oftentimes we can't communicate our expectations clearly, and whoever we're in relationship also can't express their expectations very clearly. And so we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity. So one of the steps you've got to take if someone else has unrealistic expectations of you is to be able to clarify, and particularly if it's a work scenario, get it in writing. If it's in an email, if it's in a memo, if it's a conversation, write it down and play it back for them and just say, hey, I just want to make sure I understand and I've got this clear. And even with our spouses, we talk about demand relationship versus relationship development. And in relationship development, you really want to focus on communication and getting that clarification so that if there is an unrealistic expectation, you can have an honest conversation about it. Another thing I want you to think about when you're in this scenario where someone else has an unrealistic expectation of you is think through the potential consequences before you jump into this. It is still the right thing to do, but I do recommend that you don't just react and kind of go off the deep end with this, throwing it back at them. It needs to be thoughtful on your part. If you have a boss or a partner or a teacher or someone that is consistently expecting things that are not realistic, you have to change your behavior because they're not going to change. There is no impetus or reason for them to change. The trade-off here is sometimes you changing puts them out of control, or at least feeling out of control, and that creates different conversations. Like I said, it is still the right thing to do, and I still encourage you to take that step and to start the conversation, but understand, there can be consequences to it. But I've never seen anyone regret this in the long run. It can create some friction in the short term, but long term, it is the right thing to do. So the other thing we often do is we complain. When someone else has an expectation of us, we complain. We are expected to fill a role. And I'm going to use a business example. You're on a team and you're always the one that is the positive, upbeat person. And you're having a tough day or something genuinely makes you angry. When you are not that happy-go-lucky, everything's hunky-dory and all fine and well, you're not staying in your lane and filling in that expected role. It's oftentimes a facade. It is not our genuine, authentic self to be in that happy role all the time. So you've got to, again, make a conscious choice to be in your authenticity, to go ahead and speak up and say, this really makes me angry, or whatever the scenario is. You're breaking out of that role. When you continue to try and be in that role when it's not authentic, you're being fake. It's a facade. And you are going to feel less than satisfied with yourself and your behavior. And again, you continue to perpetuate their expectation. It's okay to stand up and say, authentically, I don't feel that way right now. Or authentically, this really makes me angry and I need to talk through this. Don't blame, don't complain, but do be willing to stand up for yourself. Psychologists have actually done studies on this, and particularly in business scenarios, when you hold yourself to others' emotional expectations, it actually stops you from processing your own emotions. And we've talked on other episodes that stuffing emotions is a very unhealthy thing to do. It can actually cause you physical illness. You also learn in life through diverse experiences. And so when you have a situation where you've got these expectations, it's an opportunity for you to learn a new skill, for you to become aware, for you to step up into things and explore how you want to be perceived. I also talk a lot about being intentional. When you've been part of a team or you've been in a role for a long period of time, oftentimes you have to step back and go, how much of this has become rote and subconscious or unconscious behavior, and it's really not me. So awareness is the first step. Being authentic is the second step. You've got to step up and be willing to rock the boat a little bit. So the last type of experience and expectation I want to talk about is our expectation of outcomes. And so when we have an investment, we expect to earn interest. When we participate in a team, we expect others to do their fair share. Now, that is still an expectation of other people, but the outcome of the team is to be a successful deliverable. So in my day job, I'm a project manager. As a project manager, I cannot do the entire project. I am not a coder. I am not a developer. I am not a business analyst. And so when the rest of my team is not doing their legitimate jobs, I have a right to speak up and say, you need to step up and fill your role. You need to step up and do your job. And in that sense, I am expecting them to do their part. And that is perfectly okay. It is when I have an expectation of them to do it perfectly or to do it in 3 days when it legitimately is going to take 5 to 7 days. That's when my expectations of other people are out of alignment. That's when I am expecting them to do something that is not realistic. So another scenario that comes into this is around finances. When I invest, I expect a return on my investment. Again, there's circumstances that are beyond my control. It may or may not produce the investment I expect, but I have to do my due diligence. I have to do my homework before I go in. I cannot go blindly into an investment and go, oh, why didn't it produce 10%? It only produced 1%. Had I done my homework, there's a better chance that it would have been a stronger investment and I would have had a more realistic expectation. So the last thing I really want to delve into today is when we have expectations, whether they're realistic or unrealistic, it still triggers emotions for us. And so I want to talk a little bit about processing those emotions. So the first rule or the first guideline here is don't deny the emotions. If you have expectations of others and they let you down, own the fact that you had the expectation, but don't deny the disappointment. When you deny what you're legitimately feeling, again, you can't process through those emotions. You can't change your pattern. You can't learn to do better, or at least do different, if you ignore what you're feeling. There's a book called Emotions Buried Alive Never Die. And it's really true. When we stuff or contain or set aside, compartmentalize emotions and don't ever allow them to process through, those emotions don't just go away. They get trapped in your body as energy, and they can actually cause you illness over time. You look at people that are older and that are really bitter, there is most likely a history of unprocessed emotions that has led them to that state. We don't want to be like that. The second tool you can use is to practice the pause. I talk a lot to people about the simple art of deep breathing. And as simple as it sounds, it makes a huge difference. When we get into strong emotions, whether that's anger or shame or blame or fear, we forget to breathe. And that deprives your brain of oxygen, which makes it harder to process things logically. And so we talk about breathing in a square. Breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, out for 4, hold it for 4. And you can literally, nobody needs to notice, but you can just trace a square on your table, on your paper, on your finger, or with your finger on your leg, whatever it takes. But just take one set of 4 deep breaths, and you will help to get your brain back on track. So we're just about out of time. Remember that expectations drive emotions. Emotions are human, and it's okay to have the emotions. Just own them and control them. Don't let them control you. So thanks for joining tonight. And in 2 weeks, my show is going to be Flipping Emotions Part 2. I hope you'll tune back in then. Have a fabulous morning, afternoon, or evening, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you. Good night.
You've been listening to the Unshakable Living Show, Supernaturally and Divinely Unshakable with Lisa Beltz. Tune in twice a month for your well-deserved dose of positive energy and your personal reminder that you are perfectly imperfect, and that's okay. Find your true calling and influence the world around you for the better with your profound gifts. Walk away feeling truly unshakable. Remember, God can't steer a parked car, so step on the gas now with Lisa and let Him do the rest.